Imagine a ruler so powerful, so ambitious, that he didn't just want to dominate the world in life, he wanted to keep ruling it in death. This isn't a myth. This isn't a legend. This is the real story of China's first emperor and the terrifying mystery buried with him. For over 1,000 years, his tomb has remained sealed. No light has touched its walls. No footsteps have echoed in its halls. It waits hidden under a massive earth mound, guarded by an army of clay soldiers, mechanical traps, and even rivers of poison. Today, scientists know exactly where it is. They could open it. They could see what's inside. But they won't, because what lies beneath might be more dangerous than anyone is ready for. This is why scientists are terrified of opening the tomb of China's first emperor. And the truth might just make you afraid to. A world at war. Our story begins over 1,000 to 100 years ago, in a land torn apart. Back then, China wasn't one united country. It was split into 7 powerful kingdoms, each with their own rulers, laws, and armies. They weren't just rivals, they were enemies locked in endless war. Borders shifted with every battle. Alliances lasted only until someone offered a better deal. It was a time when victory meant survival and defeat meant annihilation. And in the western kingdom of Qin, pronounced Qin, in the 59 BC, a baby boy named Ying Zheng was born. Nobody could have guessed this child would one day bend all of China to his will. A boy king when Ying Zheng was just 13 years old. His father, the king of Qin, died suddenly. The crown passed to the boy, making him king far too young, in a court full of scheming ministers and ambitious generals. They expected to control him. They thought they could shape him into a puppet ruler. They were wrong. Even as a teenager, Ying Zheng was ruthless, calculating, and frighteningly smart. He didn't want to rule a kingdom. He wanted to rule all kingdoms. One land, one law, one ruler. No one had ever done it before, but over the next decade, he would make it happen. The conquest starting at age 22, Ying Zheng launched a relentless series of military campaigns. His armies marched across the land, storming cities, breaking alliances, and crushing rivals one by one. He had the best weapons, the most disciplined troops, and a level of organization his enemies couldn't match. Archers in perfect formation, chariots cutting through enemy lines, soldiers who would fight to the death without hesitation, and one by one, the other kingdoms fell. Han, Zhao, Wei, Zhu, Yan, Qi. By the 21 BC, China was united for the first time in history. Ying Zheng crowned himself Qin Shi Huang, meaning first emperor of Qin. He declared this was the beginning of a new era, an era that would last forever, shaping an empire. To make sure his empire stayed united, Qin Shi Huang overhauled everything. He standardized the writing system so everyone from farmers to scholars used the same characters. He created a single currency, replacing dozens of local coins. Weights and measures were standardized so trade was fair and taxes unavoidable. He even dictated the exact width of cart axles so every cart would fit perfectly on his new roads. Speaking of roads, he built thousands of miles of them, along with bridges and canals so armies could move fast, goods could travel far, and news could spread instantly. And to protect the empire's northern border, he ordered the connection of older fortifications into what became the first version of the Great Wall of China. Inside his empire, he replaced local rulers with loyal officials he chose personally. No one was allowed to challenge his power. The one enemy he couldn't defeat, but there was one enemy even the first emperor couldn't conquer: death. Qin Shi Huang became obsessed, consumed with finding a way to live forever. He sent ships across the seas in search of mythical islands said to hold the elixir of life. He commanded alchemists to create potions to stop aging. One ingredient kept showing up in these recipes: mercury. Today, we know mercury is highly toxic, slowly destroying the body and mind. But the emperor's advisors told him it was the key to immortality, so he drank it regularly. Ironically, his desperate quest to live forever may have poisoned him to death. A plan for eternity. Qin Shi Huang's obsession with immortality didn't stop at magic potions. From the moment he became king at 13, he began planning something no ruler had ever attempted: a kingdom beneath the earth. Not just a tomb, a fortress, a city, an empire in miniature, built underground, so he could keep ruling even after his body had turned to dust. And this tomb, this hidden empire, would be guarded by wonders and horrors the world had never seen before. The kingdom beneath the earth. When you think of a tomb, you might picture a stone coffin, maybe a few treasures, and some dusty walls. Qin Shi Huang, he had something else in mind. He wanted an entire world built underground, a place where his soul could keep ruling, commanding armies, and living in luxury forever. A workforce the size of a city, the scale was insane. Ancient records claim 700,000 laborers were forced to work on the project. Soldiers, craftsmen, prisoners, and farmers pulled from every corner of the empire. Even if that number was exaggerated, archaeological evidence proves this was one of the largest construction projects in human history. It went on for nearly 40 years, almost his entire reign, and was still being worked on when the emperor died in the Qin Shi Huang. Here, the site chosen for the tomb was at the foot of Mount Li, near the imperial capital. Ancient Chinese believed the mountain was rich in gold to the north and jade to the south, symbols of heaven and earth. The Qin Shi Huang, that wasn't just good real estate, it was cosmic destiny. The layout, the design of the tomb complex mirrored the capital city itself. The massive walls surrounded the underground empire, an inner city about 1.5 miles around, and an outer city stretching for miles. Between them, everything the emperor might need in the afterlife: palaces, government halls, gardens, stables for his horses, storehouses filled with food, weapons, and treasures. Even an imperial park, complete with bronze birds and musicians, so the emperor's spirit could be entertained for eternity. Engineering ahead of its time, the builders weren't just artists, they were engineers. They carved out drainage channels and sealed underground walls to keep water out. Radar scans today show the water table is about 98 feet down, meaning they had to build deep, dry, and strong. Bronze chariots with lifelike horses were buried in the complex, each made from thousands of precision-crafted parts. Some even had umbrellas, yes, umbrellas for shade in an afterlife where there is no sun. It's the kind of detail that makes you stop and think, this wasn't just for show. This was an emperor who wanted perfection, forever. The east wall on the eastern side of the tomb, the direction of his former enemies, Qin Shi Huang placed his greatest defense, because even in death, he feared revenge, and that's where he stationed his most extraordinary creation. The day the earth gave up its secret, for almost 2,000 years, the emperor's tomb lay hidden. The locals knew the mound well, but to them, it was just a hill with old legends attached. Then, in the spring of 1974, during a drought, a group of farmers began digging a well. One man's shovel struck something hard. He brushed away dirt and found the face of a warrior carved from clay, staring up at him from the ground. Soon, more pieces emerged: a torso, a leg, the tip of a bronze spear. They had no idea they just uncovered the edge of one of the greatest archaeological finds in history. The army of clay. When archaeologists began excavating, they realized they weren't looking at a single statue. They were looking at an army, thousands of life-size soldiers lined up in perfect battle formation. We know it today as the Terracotta Army. Over 8,000 warriors have been found so far, and many more remain buried. And here's the crazy part: no two are exactly alike. Every face is unique. Different hairstyles, expressions, and even stances. Some look calm, others fierce, some almost smiling. It's believed they were modeled on real soldiers, men who had once fought for the emperor in life, now condemned to serve him in death. Not just soldiers. As digging continued, archaeologists found not just infantry, but generals, archers, and cavalry with clay horses, chariots ready for battle, and in nearby pits, an entire court. Acrobats mid-leap, musicians with detailed robes, officials holding scrolls, even ducks and swans frozen in clay placed near what appeared to be an underground pond. The afterlife, according to Qin Shi Huang, would have entertainment, politics, war, and dinner. Colors lost to time. When they were made, every warrior was painted in bright, lifelike colors: red armor, blue robes, pink skin, black hair. But the moment they were unearthed and exposed to air, the paint began to flake and fade. Within minutes, centuries of preserved color vanished. It was a devastating lesson. Archaeologists realized if they rushed, they could destroy what they were trying to save. That's why so much of the Terracotta Army and the tomb itself remains buried even today. The untouched core for main pits have been explored so far. Pit 1 holds the largest army. Pit 2 has cavalry and archers. Pit 3 looks like the command post. Pit 4 is empty, possibly abandoned when construction stopped after the emperor's death. But all of this, thousands of soldiers, courtiers, and animals, is just the outskirts. The real prize lies at the very center, beneath the giant earth mound, the emperor's actual tomb chamber. No one has ever stepped inside, and if the ancient stories are true, opening it could be the most dangerous archaeological act in history. When you hear booby trap tomb, you might think of Indiana Jones' giant rolling boulders, swinging blades, maybe poison darts. But what if I told you the the real-life version inside Qin Shi Huang's tomb might be far worse. Clues from the past: we have never opened the central chamber. Everything we know comes from two sources: ancient writings and modern science. One key record comes from the records of the Grand Historian, written by Sima Jin around 100 BC, just a century after the emperor's death. He describes the tomb in haunting detail, the ceiling painted with constellations to mimic the night sky, the floor laid out like a map of China, with rivers and seas represented by flowing mercury, crossbows rigged to fire at anyone who entered without permission. The rivers of mercury. Let's start with the mercury. Sima Qian's account was so bizarre that for centuries, historians dismissed it as poetic exaggeration. But in recent years, scientists have taken soil samples around the burial mound, and the results are chilling. They found mercury levels hundreds of times higher than normal, exactly where the tomb chamber is believed to be. This isn't just a little mercury. We're talking about enough liquid metal to create actual flowing rivers in an enclosed space. Why mercury? In ancient China, mercury was associated with immortality. Ironically, the emperor obsessed with living forever was reportedly consuming mercury-based elixirs in his final years, which may have slowly poisoned him. But in death, mercury wasn't just symbolic. It was also toxic. Even a small amount of exposure can damage the nervous system. Imagine stepping into a sealed space where the air is saturated with mercury vapor for over 2,000 years. It wouldn't take long for an intruder's lungs and brain to fail. The crossbows, then there are the traps. Sima Jin wrote on mechanical crossbows, preloaded and hidden inside the tomb. The idea was simple: disturb a tripwire, and a bolt would fire with deadly force. Skeptics once laughed this off, but here's the thing: archaeologists have found ancient crossbow mechanisms in the surrounding pits, still functional after millennia. If any were left sealed inside the main chamber protected from moisture, they might still work. And they wouldn't care whether the person opening the tomb was a 3rd century grave robber or a 21st century archaeologist. The sealed environment, there's also the problem of what we can't predict. The tomb has been a sealed microenvironment for over 1,000 years. The moment we breach it, we risk triggering rapid decay. We saw this with the terracotta warriors, beautifully painted when uncovered, but losing their colors within minutes once exposed to air. Now imagine delicate wooden structures, silk banners, and ancient scrolls, perfectly preserved in total darkness. The wrong move, and they could turn to dust before anyone even photographs them. The emperor's paranoia. Everything about Qin Shi Huang's reign suggests he was thinking ahead, sometimes in terrifying ways. He unified China, standardized currency, built massive roads, and connected defensive walls. But he also ordered books burned, scholars buried alive, and monuments to his enemies destroyed. When it came to his tomb, he wasn't just building a resting place. He was building a fortress designed to keep everyone out forever. The mystery of the mound from the outside. The burial mound looks simple: a giant, grassy hill, about 250 feet high. But ground-penetrating radar suggests it's not just dirt. It's layers of earth packed over complex chambers and corridors. Some researchers believe there may be multiple tombs inside, possibly for royal family members or key officials. Others think the entire hill is hollow, like a massive underground palace. And remember, what we've excavated so far is just the outskirts. If the terracotta army was only the outer defense, what's inside could be beyond imagination. Why we haven't opened it? So here's the big question: with all our technology, why don't we just go in? The short answer: we can't risk it. Opening the tomb now could destroy it. Mercury vapors could poison researchers. Traps could still be active. At worst of all, we have no way to replicate the tomb-sealed environment once it's open. Archaeology has learned from past mistakes. The rush to open Tutankhamun's tomb in the 1920s led to damage that could never be undone. And that was a simple burial compared to this. The waiting game for now. The Chinese government has declared the central chamber off limits. The idea is to wait until we have technology that can safely explore it without breaking the seal. That could mean advanced robotic probes, molecular scanners, or even nanotechnology capable of analyzing artifacts without touching them. Until then, the emperor sleeps, surrounded by rivers of poison and a silent army of clay. The whisper of legends. Locals still tell old stories about lights seen flickering over the mound at night, and strange illnesses that struck farmers who dug too close. Whether these are ghost tales or signs of mercury vapor escaping, no one knows for sure. But the sense of unease is real, because deep beneath that hill lies not just a man's remains, but an empire frozen in time. What lies beneath? We've talked about the mercury rivers. We've talked about the crossbows. We've talked about the traps and the dangers, but now we get to the real question. What's inside that sealed chamber, and why are some scientists terrified to find out? The lost technology theory, one of the most fascinating ideas, is that the tomb may contain technology far ahead of its time. Think about it. Qin Shi Huang had the resources of an entire unified empire. He could command the best engineers, metallurgists, and artisans of his era. Some believe his obsession with immortality led him to commission devices and mechanisms we don't even know existed in ancient China. Not just traps machines, gears, moving parts, maybe even early versions of hydraulic systems powered by mercury itself. If any of this is true, it could rewrite the timeline of human invention. A treasure beyond gold. Most tombs are rated for gold and jewels, but Qin Shi Huang's burial site could be hiding something far more valuable: knowledge. Scrolls containing lost histories. Maps of lands we don't even know existed into 10 BC. Detailed records of how the Great Wall's earliest sections were built. Formulas for ancient medicines. Maybe even the immortality elixir that consumed the emperor's final years. Some archaeologists worry that revealing this knowledge to the modern world could be dangerous, especially if it includes techniques for making powerful poisons or weapons. The imperial court in Death ancient accounts say the emperor was buried with everything he would need in the afterlife. That didn't just mean treasures, it meant people. Historians believe many of his wives, servants, and guards were entombed alive, sealed forever inside with their ruler. If that's true, their remains could still be down there perfectly preserved in the airtight chamber. Imagine the chilling sight. Rooms filled with life-size recreations of court life. But the figures aren't clay. The unknown biological risk, here's where things get unsettling for modern science. If the tomb does hold preserved human remains thousands of years old, there's a small, but real, chance it could also contain ancient pathogens. Sealed away from sunlight, oxygen, and time, microbes could survive in a dormant state until we open the door. We've already seen this happen in Siberia, where melting permafrost released anthrax spores that had been frozen for decades. Now imagine a disease no one's encountered until millennia. No immunity, no vaccine, no cure. That's one of the nightmare scenarios experts quietly discuss. The cultural earthquake. The other fear isn't physical, it's cultural. If the tomb's contents challenge the official story of Chinese history, it could cause a political storm. Imagine if scrolls revealed a different account of the unification of China, or evidence that other civilizations had contact with the Qin Empire long before we thought. For a nation whose identity is deeply tied to its ancient past, that could be explosive. A legend in waiting, and yet the temptation is enormous. The Terracotta Army was just the welcome mat. That alone changed our understanding of ancient art, engineering, and military history. So what could be sitting just a few yards deeper under that massive mound? Gold-plated chariots, a working model of the empire's cities, powered by flowing mercury rivers, weapons never before seen by modern eyes, or something so alien to our expectations we wouldn't even recognize it at first. A moment in the future, one day, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 100, technology will finally be ready. Picture it, a slender robotic probe slipping through a hairline crack in the tomb wall, its camera switching on, the light cutting through to 1,000 to 100 years of darkness. The first images reveal glittering treasures, towering statues, intricate machines, and in the center, a jade coffin, its surface carved with dragons and phoenixes. The world holds its breath as scientists prepare to lift the lid, the final warning. But before we get carried away, remember this: Qin Shi Huang didn't build his tomb to be admired. He built it to be impenetrable, to keep his secrets, to protect his empire in death as fiercely as he did in life. Every legend, every historical record, every scientific finding points to the same truth. The tomb isn't just a burial site. It's a trap, a poison vault, and a mystery box all in one. And maybe, just maybe, opening it would be playing right into the first emperor's hands. So for now, the mount stands untouched, its grassy slopes hiding a secret that could change history or endanger the future. And somewhere, beneath that earth, the first emperor still waits.